We're good to start? Okay, perfect. So we're going to start. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. So welcome to this evening's Committee of Adjustment meeting. Members of the public, applicants, agents, and staff may be participating this evening either in person or virtually via Zoom. For those attending via Zoom, please note that it is our standard practice for members of the public to have their cameras off and microphones muted until it is time for that person to speak. Township staff can assist with muting microphones. If you require assistance, please use the chat function and ask staff. I am also pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Note that the Township does not have the ability to edit the live stream or recorded versions of the meeting. So public meetings have been called and notice circulated in accordance with the Planning Act with respect to applications for minor variance and or consent. The purpose of the public meetings are to inform and provide the public with the opportunity to ask questions and express views with respect to the applications. The format of the public meeting is as follows. Township staff will explain the purpose of the application and report on all correspondence received. Next, the applicant will present any further relevant information. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and or express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And next, members of the committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions for clarification of the application. After all comments have been received, the committee will consider the application with due regard to the presentations and views expressed this evening. The committee will then do one of three things: approve the application, deny the application, or defer the application pending additional or receipt of additional information. Specified persons who have either provided oral submissions or written objections but disagree with the committee's decision on an application may appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal as entitled under the Planning Act. The deadline for an appeal of consent applications is 20 days within the giving of the notice, and for minor variances within 20 days of the decision date. When commenting on an application, please give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that the names and addresses of those individuals who speak this evening will appear within the meeting minutes, which are public documents. If you wish to receive a copy of the decision, please leave your name and address with Township staff. So moving on through our agenda, is there any member of the committee that wants to disclose a pecuniary interest this evening? No, seeing none, can move on. I call for a motion for the adoption of minutes. So I have motion that's before me that's identified as COA 2023-014, moved by member Bossy, second by member Gunby, that the minutes of the February 13th, 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting be adopted and as printed and distributed. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? We are carried. I'm going to call for another motion for another set of minutes. So I have a motion identified as COA 2023-015, moved by member Gunby, second by member Hiles, that the minutes of the February 21st, 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting be adopted as printed and distributed. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? Carried. I'm going to move on to item number D, which is an adjourned application. So would Township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for item number D1, which is an application for minor variance identified as A-09-20.
Thank you, Chair. So this adjourned application, as noted, is application A0920 for lands located at 1738 Trader Cowan Road. I will point out to the committee that this is not a public meeting, as it was adjourned at a previous committee adjustment meeting. So it is just returning today for decision. Here we have the key map of the subject property outlined in red. It is located at the end of Trader Cowan Road on Matchedash Bay, and is surrounded by other shoreline residential properties and residential properties. The 2022 aerial imagery, you can see the existing development that is present on the lands. This includes the existing dwelling, which is the subject of the minor variances this evening. 3 detached accessory buildings and a dock. The dock is subject to one of the recommended conditions. So as some background, the applicant would like to raise the existing dwelling to allow for the construction of a full basement. The minor variances that are requested would recognize the existing non-complying location of the dwelling and allow for a deck on the proposed dwelling. The application was initially deferred at the June 2020 Committee of Adjustment meeting, pending a number of items, including building without a permit concerns, encroachments into the township road allowance, and flooding matters. Those have all now been addressed. Subsequently, the application returned to the committee in August of 2022, and it was deferred at the applicant's request to provide additional information to support their request to not require a development agreement as a condition. Construction plans were provided since that August 2022 deferral, which demonstrate that site alteration would occur. Therefore, staff remains supportive of the application, subject to the conditions that were initially proposed in August of 2020 to ensure compliance with all applicable policies. Here we have the site plan of the application. The one on the left shows the location of the existing dwelling and the deck that is wrapped around it. This line that is plotted here is the limits of the flooding extent as confirmed by a professional engineer. The image on the right here is just more of an overview of the entire property. So you can see the existing dwelling and that deck along with one of the detached garages in the rear yard. There has, since the time of this survey being done, there was another garage constructed in the back here. So here we have the elevation drawing of the proposed dwelling. As mentioned, the applicant would propose to raise the existing dwelling by constructing a new foundation with taller walls to accommodate a full height walkout basement. This would achieve minimizing the building footprint areas and overall impact by consolidating the built form into one structure, which is generally in accordance with the policy direction to minimize impacts. One of the recommended conditions as part of the development agreement would be the lot grading plan to ensure that the minimum openings of the proposed dwelling, including that of the walkout basement, are above the flood elevation to mitigate any sort of flood concerns or flood risk. Here we have some site photos that were taken in 2022 as part of the site visit to the property. You can see the existing development with a wraparound deck across the front of the dwelling and crawl space area here below. The proposed works would involve the raising and bracing of the existing dwelling, removal of the existing foundation walls, construction of new foundation walls to replace those, and then the placing or the connection of the existing main floor on top of the new foundation walls. This amount of development would be slightly reduced in the front yard as a result, as well as the proposed gazebo that is located here would not be reconstructed as part of the application. The applicant is actually looking to reduce the width of that deck a little bit. Just some more site photos here. You can see the dock that appears to have been constructed sometime between 2018 and today. That is the subject of one of the recommended conditions just to address compliance. And then one of the existing detached garages in the rear yard. So just in summary, staff are of the opinion that site alteration would occur as a result of the proposed development. The shoreline buffer plan through the development agreement is to ensure protection and preservation of the shoreline areas as required by provincial policy, as is standard for this type of development, and is a standard recommendation that the municipality makes for most shoreline development applications. There were no objections received to the notice of application when it was circulated for the last meeting in August of 2022. Therefore, planning staff continue to be of the opinion that the application would conform to and not conflict with any of the applicable policy documents subject to the recommended conditions. These conditions are pretty similar to what was presented to the committee in August of 2022. However, with some slight amendments just to address the matters that have already been corrected. The first being that taxes are paid to date. The construction is in substantial compliance with the plan submitted with the application. The subject lands are brought into compliance with the zoning bylaw as amended. That's the condition proposed to address the dock. Or being that the property owner enter into a development agreement with the municipality pursuant to section 45(9) of the Planning Act in order to establish a vegetation protection zone to protect the existing vegetation on the property and restore the shoreline area vegetation to the maximum extent possible, provide for additional plantings of native and self-sustaining species, or measures to protect and enhance the existing vegetation within the front yard up to the attached deck and front wall. The collection of securities to ensure that the vegetation protection zone remains in good condition for at least 12 months. Silt fencing and construction related measures with respect to erosion control. A lot grading plan confirming the setbacks by an Ontario land surveyor. The footings of the proposed dwelling would need to be pinned to ensure conformity with the minor variance. A warning clause regarding the flood elevation of Georgian Bay. And all costs associated with the agreement would be the responsibility of the applicant. So that concludes my presentation for the committee, but if there's any questions, happy to discuss.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to give the applicant an opportunity to, if they're here and they want to say anything. No, this is not a public portion, but at least I'll give you an opportunity because I know it's been deferred a couple of times.
How about
yeah,
Keith Prentice for the owner, Richard White, who's sitting behind me. I'm the designer on the project. We have just want to clarify a couple of things. The intention is simply to raise the dwelling. There probably wouldn't be a substantial. Currently, there's a bit of backfill up against the foundation, which is an existing wood foundation. So that would likely be drawn back and probably some sort of a retaining wall put in, just so that we don't have earthworks up against a wood foundation, and simply just raise the building up. I do have some question about the pinning of the foundation, as the foundation is where it is existing and we're not proposing any changes to it. So I'm not sure how we would move that, so to speak. And the lot grading thing as well, like I said, I mean, it's likely got to occur anyway, but we're not really proposing to change or alter the existing grades. And the only other concern we have is whether we'd be able to enter into this agreement at the same time as the building permit was issued.
I'm going to put your questions through to the planning staff to provide some insight on.
Thank you, Chair. So with respect to the pinning of the foundation, that condition is just to ensure that it's constructed in the same location, with the understanding that the existing slab would be used. Staff are willing to make some modification to that condition, just to add perhaps as required at the end, and that would give the discretion to the CBO to not require the pinning of the foundation. And I'm sorry, could you just repeat your last question with the timing, please?
The other question was in relative to the timing of the site agreement, whether we could enter into the development agreement at the same time that the building permit was issued.
Yeah, so through the chair, you're welcome to apply for both at the same time. However, prior to the issuance of the building permit, the development agreement will need to be executed and registered. Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. As is mentioned before, it's not a public meeting, so we'll just bypass that altogether. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Seeing as there's none, just one comment through to the planning staff. Are we going to add that as part of that wording as part of the conditions you had mentioned as required?
Yes, to the chair, I would just recommend that the committee pass an amended motion that would read that staff report D23 -00, or it should say D23-009 be received, and that in matter of plan and not in the matter of minor variance A09-20, the requested variances be provisionally approved subject to the recommended conditions as amended, included as attachment to the staff report D23-00.
So that's all up there right now. Okay. Bear with me for 1 minute. We're almost there. Okay, so since there's no further committee discussion, I'm going to call for a motion that staff report D23-009 be received, and that the matter minor variance A-09-20, the requested variances be provisionally approved subject to the recommended condition as amended, included in the attachment to staff report D23-009. I know that motion has been moved by member
Hiles and second by member Kish.
Okay, moved by member Hiles, second by member Kish. So I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? We are carried. So the hearing for that application is now closed. You are free to stay for the remainder of the meeting or leave as the committee moves on to the next application. So would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for application identified as E1, which is an application for minor variance identified as A-04-23.
Thank you, Chair. So our next application, as stated, is located within the Greenwood Landings development in Coldwater. Just report that we did receive some additional correspondence between the publishing agenda and the public meeting this evening. Just comments from the Severed Sound Environmental Association stating that they have no objections to the application as it is currently proposed. So I will go into the staff report. So as noted, the subject lands are located within the Greenwood Landings development in the Coldwater settlement area. Just for general context, it is that development that abuts the rear of the Coldwater Foodland, south of Gill Street, but north of the intersection of Coldwater Road and Highway 12. This is an aerial imagery of the property captured in early 2022. Our mapping hasn't been yet updated to reflect the streets within the subdivision. So that is why they're outlined here, just for some context of where the subject lands are located relative to the overall development. So the lands form the dedicated townhouse blocks of phase 2 of the Greenwoods Landings registered plan subdivision. So the blocks are to eventually contain 68 townhouse dwellings with attached garages and porches and decks. So As outlined in the staff report, the applicants are seeking an increased lot coverage to accommodate the construction of those townhouse dwellings. So the proposed allocation of that coverage of the total requested 45% would be that 40% of that coverage be dedicated to the townhouse with the attached garage, and then 5% of that be allocated for attached porches and decks. The application's not to contemplate the use of the lands for the townhouse dwelling. This is already permitted and covered within the registered plan of subdivision. The minor variance is strictly related to the design and what those townhouses will eventually look like on site. The applicant and their agent have provided some concept site plans of what that could potentially look like when it's developed. It's a little hard to see on the screen here, but this is sort of what the potential outline of one of the townhouse properties could look like, with the footprint of the townhouse in purple, the attached garage to the right, the attached porch and deck. So that is sort of what their proposed sort of concept would intend to look like along this row of the townhouse blocks. And this second slide, as you can see, the lots are a bit deeper on the south side, on the southern townhouse blocks here. But again, same idea, kind of depicting what that site layout might look like with that 45% requested coverage, 40% to the dwelling, 5% or to the dwelling and the garage, and then 5% allocated to that porch and attached deck. So as noted within the staff report, the subject lands and the overall development are located within the cold water flood proofing area. So during the draft plan of subdivision and subdivision agreement process, the applicants and their development team were responsible for the preparation of various functional servicing reports and stormwater management plans. These were all peer reviewed by the township's consultants during that process. So those reports address matters such as drainage, the displacement of these waters, and the applicants have provided confirmation from the professional engineers at Tathem's Engineering involved in the original preparation of those studies that the proposed increased lot coverage would not impact the overall function of the site or the stormwater management on site. And this just speaks to the comment provided by SSEA. So as noted within the staff report, the lands are located within the wellhead protection area in cold water. So kind of same idea during the preparation of the subdivision agreement and draft plan of subdivision process. The functional servicing report and other materials were reviewed by the Severn Sound Environmental Association, being the township's risk management official, just to ensure that the overall development itself wouldn't result in any negative impacts to water quality or quantity. And again, we have received correspondence from SSEA this afternoon confirming that they have no objections to the application as proposed. So these are just some site photos to kind of give an idea of what the development looks like right now. So this is sort of facing east down Brandon Ave. The future townhouses will be located to the left and the right. And this is sort of facing north towards phase one of the development. So you can see that phase one's starting construction with numerous of the single detached dwellings, with the townhouses forming part of phase two. So as outlined in the staff report, staff are generally in concurrence with the planning justification report provided by Ms. Michelle Cutts of RUDY and Associates, who is in attendance tonight and has provided a presentation to speak to following staff's report. And again, they have provided that confirmation from Tatham Engineering regarding the on-site stormwater management. No other comments or objections were received from internal departments or agencies. So for these reasons, Planning and Development Department has no objections to the approval of the application. In this particular case, as it is part of an overall subdivision agreement, there wouldn't be any recommended conditions, as they would all be captured already in the subdivision agreement process. But that's all I have for now, but Ms. Michelle Cutts is here and available, and I believe she has a presentation, so I will share that for her now.
Perfect. The floor is yours. Just grab the microphone and make sure it's on.
No problem. I'll share my screen for you.
You have to hold it. Yeah, because it's live.
Definitely. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So good evening. I'm Michelle Cutts of RUDY and Associates, and here with me this evening are the owners of the property, as well as Steve Andrick, who is the real estate agent who deals with all of the purchasers and whatnot on the site. Okay, yeah, there. I won't go into too much detail about the location because Emily did a great job of describing that, but we are looking at the minor variance for block 77 through to 90 of the registered subdivision. And those are both along Brandon Avenue as already identified. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as Emily has pointed out, it is a registered subdivision. It comprises of 2 phases. The first phase is currently serviced and has homes. I think Steve said this evening, 20 homes currently under construction, which is very exciting for this property. All of the townhouses within this proposed amendment or proposed minor variance tonight are located within that phase, the phase 2 lands. They're currently undergoing some utility servicing and they will be ready for substantial completion very soon if they aren't already. But they're very, very, very close. I think hydro is just the last going in. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, you know what? Let's go to the next slide again. Sorry. Okay. So the current zoning. So right now the property is zoned RM1, and it obviously it permits the townhouse dwellings. And I've shown here just, I guess, hopefully you can see that, but I will read it out. So I've shown the current provisions within the RM1 zone. So the RM1 zone has a provision of minimum lot area of 250 square meters and a minimum lot frontage of 6 meters. The townhouses that we're proposing on these townhouse blocks are approximately 266 square meters in size, and they have a minimum lot frontage of 7.4 meters, and I'm referring to interior townhouse units, not the side interior. So the interior unit's not any exterior side yards. So basically the intent here is just to show that these lots are actually larger and exceed the current provisions within that RM1 zone. So the next chart I'm showing here is what you can get on the lot with a 35% coverage. So with that current zoning. And basically what you can achieve on these lots on one side of the street, so from blocks 77 to 83, so the first diagram there, you can achieve 1,000 square feet of coverage. Now this 1,000 square feet has to include the garage, the porch, and any deck that's above 1 meter. So a garage 10 by 20, there's 200 square feet right away that would be taken off. And on the larger lots, we could achieve about approximately 1,200 square feet, but again, removing the decking, the porch, and also having to include the garage in that. So basically what we're achieving here with the 35% coverage is only 2-story dwellings. What we're looking to do is to create a range of housing here to be able to include bungalows with lofts, and 2-story dwellings. So as indicated by township staff, the dwelling lot coverage that we're proposing is 40%, and an additional 5% for any porches or decks that are above that 1 meter above grade. I've shown some diagrams here to show sort of what that can achieve for the two different block areas. So for block 77 to 83, and these are the smaller blocks that are about 36 meters in depth, they can accommodate a bungalow loft and 2-story models. And when we move to the longer lots on block 84 to 90, they can accommodate a bungalow loft, and of course the 2-story as well. So this actually just provides us with the ability to provide a front porch, which will assist in streetscape, and outdoor decking, which helps with private outdoor amenity space as well. So for the next slide, this is just basically showing the different dwelling interiors of the dwellings that we're proposing on the lands. You can see the bungalow loft has a master bedroom on the main floor, and then a second bedroom upstairs. But the bungalow, we actually can achieve a 2-bedroom bungalow, which would be very great for the area and is definitely something that people want these days. So that bungalow on one of the largest lots is actually 1,165 square feet, not including the garage. So we can achieve an appropriate sized bungalow with the 45% coverage. The next slide is showing the typical 2-story dwelling. So in determining whether a minor variance is appropriate for the lands, as you are aware, we go through the 4 tests of the Planning Act. The first test being, is it minor in nature? Is the request minor in nature? This request is quite minor in nature. We are requesting to increase the coverage on lands and it will not impact the subdivision design. It doesn't impact any neighboring properties because it's within an existing subdivision that's under development as we speak. And all of the setbacks within the RM1 zone are actually exceeded if not met. Is the request desirable in nature? And it's my opinion that it is. It provides the ability to provide a range of housing sizes for people, future residents from all walks of life, which is something that is very highly sought out right now in the planning atmosphere today. It maintains the general intent of the official plan, its residential use, and it also maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. As I said, all of the everything is exceeded within the provisions, with the exception of this minor variance request this evening. And the next slide, thank you. Keep doing that. It's my professional planning opinion that this requested minor variance does represent good land use planning. It's minor in nature, desirable, it meets the intent of the OP and the zoning bylaw. It will promote a much needed mix of housing types and sizes on the lands that are already serviced for development. The ability to vary the housing types and sizes within the subdivision promotes residential housing accessible to future residents with varying socioeconomic backgrounds. The request accommodates outdoor amenity areas and provides the ability to incorporate front porches, which I feel are very important to streetscape. The request facilitates a mix of unit sizes within the development. And again, it maintains all of the setback requirements, thereby not affecting the character of the area. And it conforms to the objectives and the goals of the PPS and the growth plan.
Perfect. Thank you for the informative presentation. Just going to move on. I'm going to guess there's no members of the public here, but if there are any individuals who wish to speak or make an oral submission to the committee, please let us know. I'm going to guess there's not, so I'm going to declare the public portion of the application closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Seeing as there's none, and oh, sorry.
I just had a really brief comment. Speaking from experience, thank you for including possibility for a rear deck on these units, because I have seen developments where you get 65 minor variance applications for decks because it wasn't considered at the beginning of the project. So thank you for saving staff time and our time for doing that in the future.
Perfect. Seeing as there's nothing further, I'm going to call for a motion. So I have a motion that's been identified as COA 2023-017, moved by member Kish, second by member Bossy, that staff report D23-008 be received, and that minor variance application A-4-23 be approved. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? It is carried. The hearing for that application is now closed. You are free to stay if you wish, or leave as we move on to our next agenda application.
Hello, everybody.
Hey,
I apologize I'm not there. I'm recovering from COVID, so I thought you'd prefer it if I showed up this way.
sounds good. Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, on the mend for sure. So, as I said, when you guys went through your orientation, when we get a property standards appeal, I would come do a quick orientation for you. It's anticipated that we will have our first hearing next month. So hence why I'm here this evening, so you can kind of get your feet under you before I give you an agenda. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So I've just got 2 slides, so I'll just share them really quick and I'll go through them. And then if there's any questions, then you guys, I'm happy to answer as many as you've got, because this is a similar structure in that it's quasi-judicial like committee of adjustment, but it's a bit of a different animal because it's that these people are under enforcement orders. So the approach that they're coming to is with a very different flavor than you're going to be used to dealing with committee of adjustment. So give me one moment here. Lost my mouse. There we are. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, so Property Standards Committee. So this committee operates under the Building Code Act and the Township's Property Standards Bylaw, which is enacted under the Building Code. It sets out the standards that people are required to keep their properties at, maintain their homes at, everything you would expect or hope to see, I would think, in a property standard bylaw, a bylaw named Property Standards. You are required to render decisions. We'll get to that in a second. The meetings are open to the public. A little different than committee of adjustment. Property standards will not be live streamed. Often what you'll find coming forward are very personal appeals with respect to the information you're going to hear. Ones in the past I've heard are, I'll lose my house if I have to do this work. I can't financially afford it. There's health issues. And we just didn't think it was appropriate to live stream that for a permanent public record. But they are open to the public. So if neighbors wanted to come and listen in or such, then it is open to the public. It is still a committee hearing. We just thought it was unnecessary to stream such a private issue. Property owners who do receive an order to comply may appeal the order. So this is what you'd be coming in at. So these folks have received, our bylaw officer has attended, or a property standards officer has attended, found that there's a deficiency on the property, and they've issued an order that comes with a list of stuff that they have to complete by certain deadlines. Now, when you see an order, not every item might have the same deadline. Some might be 30 days. Some, if it's more substantial, could be 3 months. So I've seen it where you have 5 different items and they've all got different dates. And the property owner could be coming to ask for extensions on only some of those. They could be coming to ask for extensions on all of them. It's pretty unusual that you see a property owner ask that the whole thing just be repealed or like waived. They know that there's issues with their properties. They're normally just coming to ask for more time. I do act as your recording clerk. So next month I will be there in person. It will be a separate meeting and agenda from committee of adjustment. So you'll have your committee of adjustment meeting first, and then we'll adjourn, and then you'll adjourn that meeting, and then you'll start a new meeting with the property standards committee. So this in general is what your agenda will look like, pretty straightforward. So staff will provide a report it'll include site pictures and everything. Given the nature of these files, committee members are not invited to do site visits on these items. We do not want you attending the property. Sometimes the property owners can be hostile to individuals visiting, and we do not want that issue arising. The appellant can submit materials in advance, but they're not required to. So I always strongly encourage people to submit stuff, even if they want to add extra at the meeting. Because then the committee at least has something from them in advance as to where they're coming from. I've had 50-50 success on it. So, but at the end of the day, they're coming to plead their case. After the committee hears from the township staff and then from the appellant, They can review the matter, so you'll be able to ask questions of township staff, or you'll be able to ask questions from the appellant. The appellant cannot ask questions of the staff. It just goes to the committee. This isn't a back and forth between the property standards officer and the appellant. This is the appellant presenting an appeal to the committee. Once you've had a chance to ask any questions you have on any part of the order, we'll go into this confidential session piece here, which means we will actually, it's not called closed session, which is normally what you'd see under other agendas. It's called confidential session. We'll go into the back room and I'll bring my laptop and you guys can hash it out and decide what you want to do with respect to upholding it, changing it, or rescinding it or quashing the order. And then once you have that motion kind of ready to go, then you will proceed to come back into chambers. And then the chair will read out the decision. There's not normally any discussion on the decision. It's just read out. And then the meeting is adjourned. I will then give a copy of the decision to the appellant and to staff, and we proceed from there. So it can be a little bit of a testy situation. I've seen people crying, so just I don't think we'll have that in this situation. But like I said, you'll get your agenda about a week out, like normal. So, and it'll include all sorts of pictures. It'll outline the issues on the property, different sections of the bylaw that apply to the order. So the bylaw itself is 20 some odd pages long, which we obviously don't need you to be going through bit by bit by bit. That's not your job. Your job is to read what we give you, render a decision, hear the case before you. And if we've done our job properly, then all the pieces of the bylaw that you need should be in the staff report. Okay. If there's any process questions when we get to the appeal, then by all means, that's me. So just ask them. You can stop it at any point in time. I know you have a chair right now for Committee of Adjustment, and you're welcome to stay with your current chair through the next meeting. I don't know if we'll have many of these. Last term, we only had one property standards appeal. When I was at my last municipality, we never had any, and then we had a rush of them. So, and then they haven't had many since then. It seems to be that people are becoming far more aware of their right of appeal, which is great. And especially given the hard times a lot of people are having, then that tends to be what's driving the need for extensions. That said, you'll definitely hear from staff that they don't want extensions to be granted forever. They want to see some progress. So, and there's normally some pretty good reasons why. So in the past, I've had some, just to give you some examples, where a gentleman had some serious issues with his property. The eaves trough was falling off. There were holes in the deck. The well cover was exposed. It had a huge hole in it. But all these things, knowing the circumstances, staff had given the individual multiple different dates. The obvious exception was the well cover. Staff wanted that fixed in a week, and the committee did uphold that because it was physically a safety issue on the property. And he didn't want animals falling into the well and having issues with his drinking source then and everything else. So, but then when it came to the eaves troughing and the deck, they gave him a couple extra months. So you can, it's completely going to be up to the committee's decision. The nice thing is that you don't have to have that nitty-gritty conversation in public. It's one of the few opportunities you will get to be able to have that discussion in closed session, and then kind of come to a consensus before you come back out. So, any questions?
Yeah, go through. Member Bossy.
Will there be criteria to make the decision by, like, with the minor variances, there's 4 criteria that have to be met, or is it strictly how you feel?
We're going to give you the sections from the bylaw, which is the standard that council set for property standards for the municipality. And so that's the municipal's standard as far as Severn's concerned. And then from there, it will be up to you guys to figure out whether or not you think the deadlines provided are fair or not. I will not underscore depending on the circumstance, and I think the one coming in April will actually be a good one for you to cut your teeth on. They're not easy. These are not easy hearings to have. They're not going to be easy decisions to make. The one that the committee had last term was a very bizarre circumstance. It was not a normal property standards appeal. This is much more normal, the one that's coming forward. So yeah, they're not easy. I wish there was a litmus test that I could give you to say 1, 2, 3, 4. But it is a very subjective thing. It's the nature of bylaw enforcement. So.
Perfect. Member Kish, I believe, had a question.
I guess, is our decision final, or is there like an appeal process or somebody else that can override our decision? How does that part work?
So the only appeal body for a property standards decision is Superior Court. So there is an appeal body. I've never seen someone take that final step in all the various appeals I've dealt with, which unfortunately is more than I ever wanted to see. But I've never seen someone go there, but that is there if they really do disagree with it.
Member Hiles has a question.
Thank you. Will we have staff with us in the confidential discussion session to reference or ask any questions at that time, or is it just us?
Once you go into closed or confidential session, it is just you guys and me.
Okay, thank you.
So if you have questions of staff or the appellant, because you may have more questions that you want to probe from them too, they all need to be asked before you go into confidential session.
Okay, thank you for that.
I believe that's all the questions that everybody here has. So thank you very much for the presentation.
No problem. I'll see you next month.
Perfect. To the planning staff, do we need to have a motion that we accept that for? Yep, perfect. Oh, there we go. So I have a motion that's identified as COA 2023-018, moved by member Bossy, second by member Gunby, that item F1 presentation from the Clerk Property Standards Committee training be received for information. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. There is no correspondence. I'm going to call for a motion for adjournment. We have a motion that's identified as COA 2023-019, moved by member Gunby, second by member Hiles, that the Committee of Adjustment be adjourned at 7:20 p.m. on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. I call for a vote. All those in favor, and we are carried. Good night.